Hello, in this video, I'll show you how to create a login system in Unreal Engine using Firebase and the Firebase Blueprint Plugin Library. Here's what we'll be doing. When we start our app, there'll be a simple login screen. We can reset our password, create an account, or sign in. Before we begin, we need to set up a few things for Unreal Engine and Firebase. First, download the assets I'm using in this video to follow along. The link will be posted in the video description. Then go to the Unreal Marketplace and install the Firebase Blueprint plugin for Unreal Engine. Now go to console.firebase.google.com and sign in with a Gmail account. We'll use Firebase to store the user's account information. Add a new project and name it whatever you want. Inside the console, expand the Build tab and select Authentication. Click on Get Started and enable the email and password sign-in method. Click on the Build tab again and select Real-Time Database. Click on Create Database and proceed to complete the steps. Once authentication and real-time database is ready, we'll need to download the Google Services file for this Firebase project so we can connect to it using the plugin. Click on the gear icon and select Project Settings. Scroll down to the Your App section and create an Android project if you're using Windows. For Mac users, create an iOS app. Insert a name for the package. Then click on Register App. Download the Google Services file and then click Next until you reach the last step. Click on Continue to Console to complete the process. Now that the setup for Firebase is completed, create a new Unreal Engine project. Open the Plugins menu and search for FBP. Enable it and restart the project. Locate the Google Services file that you downloaded earlier and move it to the Unreal Engine project folder. The file will be used by the plugin to connect to your Firebase project. That's all for the setup. We can start building the UI for the login screen. I'll create all the components and then explain what we'll do with them after. In the content drawer, create a game instance called App Instance. Then create a new level and call it Login Level. Now create 4 blank widgets. Call one login page, another called Reset Password page, the third called Create Account page, and the last one is Game Widget. Now import all the images from the Assets folder. We will use the app instance to handle the login state changes and navigate the user to different screens based on whether they are logged in or not. If they are logged in, the game screen should show up. Otherwise, the login screen should be active. 3 of the widgets represent the 3 different UI for the login screen, and the game widget is for the game so we can log out. Now open the app instance blueprint. Add the event init node, and then call listen for sign-in changes from the plugin. Click and hold on the onSignedIn callback pin, and drag on an empty spot on the blueprint. Select Add Event, then Add Custom Event. Do the same for the onSignout callback as well. We're listening to the sign-in states in the game instance because when the game starts, it will execute the event init node, and then attach a listener that will detect whether someone is signed in or out of the app. Another reason why it's done in the game instance is because it will remain active throughout the lifecycle of the app. This way, we can direct the user to different screens based on their login states. To test this, add 2 open level by object reference nodes, and connect them to the callbacks. For onSign-in, we want to display the default level since that's the game. For onSignout, use the login level. Compile, save, and go to the project settings under the Edit menu. Select the Maps and Modes menu, and scroll down until you see the section for Game Instance. In the Game Instance dropdown, select the App Instance blueprint that was created. Close the menu and run the app. We should see a black screen since we did not add anything to the login level. Open the login level blueprint. Add the event begin play node, then grab the player controller. And call set show mouse cursor. This will allow us to see the mouse cursor so we can interact with the login page. After that, use the Create Widget node and add it to the viewport. Inside the Create Widget node, click on the drop-down menu and select the Login Page widget. Compile, save, and run the app to see if everything is working. Since the widget is empty, we'll still see a black screen. Let's add content to it. In the Content drawer, open the Login Page widget. In the palette, add a canvas and set the size to 1280 by 720. Go back to the palette and place the image for the login page inside the canvas. Set the anchor to use the 4 corners, and then set all the offset to 0 to fill the screen. Once the image is resized, set the anchor to the center. If we compile, save, and run the app, it will no longer show a black screen. All we need to do now is to add the text views and buttons for the UI. In the palette, Add 2 editable text objects and resize them to fit the image. Rename the top input box to email input and set the anchor to the center. Then set the hint text to email. Change the font size to 27 and color to black. For the second input, rename it to password input. And use the same values for the font size, color, and anchor. Set the hint text to password and enable the is password appearance. For the buttons, add a long one underneath the password input. Then add 2 smaller ones under the long button. Make sure to anchor all the buttons to the center. Rename the long one Login button, the small one on the left Reset button, and the one on the right to Create button. Now drag a text object into each button to label them. The long one is Login. The one on the left is Reset. And the one on the right is Create. Compile, save, and run the app again to make sure it's still working. Now we'll do the same for the Reset Password page. In the content drawer, open the Reset Password page widget. Add a canvas and make sure the size is 1280 by 720. Then add the Reset Password page image. Add an editable text field then set the font size to 27 and color to black. Set the hint to email and name it email input. Add 2 buttons underneath the input box. Label the button on the top to reset and name it to Reset button. Then set the label to cancel for the one at the bottom and rename it to Cancel button. We'll need to anchor all the elements to the center as well. That's all for the reset page. We just need to do one more widget for the login screen. Compile, save, and run the app to make sure it's still working. Open the Create Account page widget. Then add a canvas and image for it. Fill the page to make it look like mine. Rename the email input to email input, the password input to password input, the cancel button to cancel button, and the create button to create button. Make sure all the elements are anchored to the center. That's all for the login screen widgets. We can begin working on the logic to connect everything. We'll start by adding a click event to the create button in the login page, so we can click on it to display the create account page. Compile and save the changes. Open the login page widget and go to the graph. Grab a reference to the create button and bind it with an onClick event. Then use the create widget node to create the create account page widget and add it to the viewport when we click on the button. Compile, save, and run the app. If we click on the create button now, the create account page should appear. Now go into the create account page widget graph. Grab a reference to the create button, then bind it with an onClick event. To create an account, use the create account with email and password node from the Firebase Blueprint plugin. Then grab a reference to the email and password inputs and connect the values with the pins inside the node. To create the callbacks, click and hold on a pin, then drag on an empty spot. Select Add Event, then add Custom Event. For the onSuccess callback, print out a message telling us that the account is created. For onFail, print out the error message. If we compile, save, and run the app, we should be able to use the Create Account page to create the account. Navigate to the Create Account page, then enter an email and password. If we click Create, we should get a message telling us that the account is created, and the screen will change since it automatically logs us in when we create the account. If we restart the app, you can see that the game screen will be shown. That's because the login session is saved when we sign in, so we need to log out to go back to the login screen. Open the content drawer and go into the game widget. Add a canvas and a button. Then label it log out and rename it to log out button. Compile, save, and open the default game blueprint. Add the event begin play node and get the player controller. Then set show cursor to true so we can interact with the screen. Now add the game widget to the view. Compile, save, and run the app. The logout button should appear. Go to the game widget graph and grab a reference to the logout button. Then add a click event to it and call the sign out node from the plugin. If we compile, save, run the app again, and click on the logout button, the login screen should appear. Now that we have an account, we can define the logic to sign in. Go back to the login page widget graph. Grab a reference to the login button and attach a click event to it. Now call the sign in with email and password node and add the callbacks. For the email and password, we'll use the values from the inputs. Compile, save, and run the app. If we enter the credentials for the account, and hit the login button, we should transition to the game screen. Now let's put in the logic to reset the account password. Open the Reset Password page widget and go to the graph. Grab a reference to the reset button, then add a click event to it. To reset the password, use the Send Password Reset Email node. Add the callbacks, and pass in the text from the email input. Compile, and save the changes. Go back to the login page widget and get a reference to the reset button. Add a click event to it, then call create widget and create the reset password page widget. Lastly, add it to the viewport. Compile, save, and run the app. Navigate to the reset password page and enter the email for the account. If we click on the reset button, we should get an email with instructions to reset the password. That's all for the login system portion of the video. For the last section, we'll add the logic to cancel each page so we can go back if we do not want to do anything. If you find this helpful, give the video a like, share, and subscribe. Go to the Create Account page graph. Grab a reference to the Cancel button and add a click event to it. To go back, just use the Remove from Parent node. Compile and save the changes. Now go to the Reset Password page widget graph and do the same. Get the reference to the Cancel button, add the click event, call Remove from Parent. Compile, save, and run the app. If we navigate to the Create Account page and hit Cancel, we'll go back. And if we navigate to the Reset Password page and hit Cancel, it will go back as well. That's all for this video. If you find this helpful, give it a like, share, and subscribe.